What should people not do?
They aren't allowed into some restaurants because they're a foreigner. Just the general cleanliness of like the cities and that, like walking around the cities.
The people here are very polite and very respectful and
Hi everyone, how's it going today? It's Tatsu. The other day, I interviewed non-Japanese people about their birth experience and culture shock in Japan. Alright, let's dive into it. Thank you very much for help. What country are you from?
I'm from Germany.
Guten Tag.
Hello.
Wie geht's?
Mir geht's gut und dir?
Ganz okay. How long have you been in Japan so far?
I'm here for 3 weeks now. I will leave tomorrow, so it's my last day here.
What made you come to Japan?
All in all, I did the travel for 4 months, Southeast Asia, and I was always interested in the culture and in the food and in the living here in Japan because I started to watch anime when I was a younger child, and then I watched a bit YouTube and Instagram and saw a lot of documentaries about the history and about the landscapes. So I saw that it was really beautiful with a lot of hills, lakes. So you could do hikes, you could go to the beach at the countryside. Yeah, so I wanted to see it. And after graduating my university, I wanted to do a Southeast Asia travel. So I was in Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So that was perfect to continue or to end it in Japan.
Interesting. Today, I wanted to ask you about culture shock in Japan. Have you had any bad experience in Japan?
Culture shocking maybe was I was prepared that the people sometimes are a bit different here in the kind of anime style, so that the girls sometimes style in the skirt and in this long socks and in this like sometimes maybe kind of emo thing. But so it was not so much shocking seeing them on the streets with the big eyes and sometimes this colorful contact lenses and a lot of makeup. It was still new, but what was shocking was that a lot of people, especially in the big cities, walking in suits and are very dressed up. The men and the women are like with skirts and very formal clothes. So after my 3 months of backpacking, arriving in my old clothes, I would feel like, oh shit, I'm maybe a bit underdressed. Why is everyone so formal here and so dressed up? I mean, even the people who are just like our age, they were also in suits and in fresh haircuts. And even when there were people in street clothes, it looked like they are still prepared to go to a celebration event. Bad experience. I was lost sometimes, especially at the train stations, because it was new. How should you get a ticket? For what train do I need a ticket? How do I drive with the bus? So I have to entrance the bus, get my ticket, and pay in the end. It's not like it is in Germany. Sometimes I was a bit lost, but it was never a bad experience because every people I asked, just with Google Translate, showing them what is my problem or just showing them the train station or the location where I want to go, they recognized it fast and tried to help me, especially the stuff at the train station where we are like, okay, you have to go there, you have to buy this fee or you have to buy this ticket. For example, one time I traveled 2 hours with the train, had a lot of stops and moved on to the next train. And in the end, I recognized that I had to pay like 500 yen and I didn't pay something. I was, oh, that's confusing. But when I wanted to enter to the Shinkansen, I needed a ticket and that was missing. So instead of being like, oh, you didn't pay your ticket in the beginning, now you have to pay a fee or you have to, I don't know, get so we have a problem now. Where we're like, oh, no problem, you just can pay the fee now, then you get the ticket and then you can enter the Shinkansen. It was really, people here are always very kind, very helpful. So when you have a confusing situation, most of them want to help you. But at the same time, sometimes, especially the older people, when you ask them and they have no idea, they say just hi or like yes, so they don't want to say that they are confused and they just try to help you and say yes, okay, you have to go there. So when you feel still confused and think that or you have the impression that they also don't know what it is, you just have to ask the next person.
Is there anything you'd like to tell other tourists not to do while they're in Japan?
The people here are very polite and very respectful and have a really strong common sense. For example, in a train, you shouldn't talk because everyone just wants to enjoy their peace. So nobody is talking in the train. At the same time, it is okay to eat or to drink in the train, but you should do it very quiet and you shouldn't eat food that is very stinky or has a bad smell because then you would also interrupt the next person. Yeah, all in all, you shouldn't be rude because everyone is so polite here too. So if you have a really good common sense, I think you don't have a problem here. For example, it is okay to clean your nose with a tissue, but you shouldn't be around a big group of people. What they do, they're like sniffing it up and then you need a bit of space and then you can clean your nose, for example. Or it's also in the train, you shouldn't get a call there, you have to do it after the train. I would recommend this.
I see.
And you need a lot of small money for the buses because they have no change in the bus. So if you want to get a ticket there, you take your ticket and then in the end you can see on the board in the bus how much you have to pay, and then you get the ticket and the money in, and then that's it. So you need some coins here.
What's the huge difference between Germany and Japan?
The food in one way. So I really love the ramen. You can get it every day. Then there are, so in the how the people interact, there are not so many difference, I would say. What one big difference is that it's really clean here. So the streets, you don't see trash, or also in the parks, nowhere. You can't see trash. Everything is completely clean. That's also one problem if you have trash. You always have to take it with you to the next grocery store or to your hostel maybe, and then you can drop the trash there.
Right.
So that's a big difference. But I like it. It's good. What else? For the people who smokes, you can't smoke in the streets. There are always signs that you shouldn't smoke here. But same. And if you have the common sense, and for example at night or if you are alone, I think it's okay to smoke if you just take the rest of the cigarette with you and you don't interrupt somebody. That's the big thing.
Oh, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Dankeschön. What country are you from?
I'm from New Zealand.
How long have you been in Japan so far?
Been in Japan for just over a week now.
Today, I wanted to ask you culture shock in Japan. What was the biggest culture shock during staying in Japan so far?
Just getting around the language, like I knew a few bits and pieces of Japanese, but just when you come to a country where it's the native language, it's spoken a lot quicker, and just trying to feel confident to use the words has definitely been a shock. I mean, I've travelled mainly in English-speaking countries, so that's been a bit of the language barrier has been a bit of a shock.
From your perspective, what's the difference between here in Japan and your country?
Just the general cleanliness of like the cities and that, like walking around the cities. Back home, there'll be a lot more litter around, like the general appreciation of the nature as well, like lots of natural parks, and they're all upkept really well, and like all the shrines and temples have been all looked after in that aspect. I mean, New Zealand's is a lot less religious, I guess, and the cultural difference, is noticeable.
Do you have any advice to us non-Japanese people who want to come to Japan?
Just enjoy it and just immerse yourself in it. Like try and learn a few words. Just even to say "Ohayou gozaimasu" to the shopkeeper in the morning when you go get your coffee, and that. Just enjoy the culture and appreciate the culture that is here. It's very different, I think, from most places I've travelled to in the world. So just embrace it.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for help. What country are you from?
I'm from the UK, England.
From the UK. Could I ask which part?
So I'm from England, and most recently I was living in London, but I'm from the south of
I
England.
see. How long have you been in Japan so far?
I've been in Japan almost 2 months with a short break in between.
That means you came here on a vacation, kind of.
Yes, I was with my partner, and we left the UK in January and we went around Asia, and then we ended up here.
Interesting. What made you come to Japan?
I think ever since COVID, this is something I think that lots of Japanese people experience, is there's a huge increase in tourism to Japan. And so honestly, it was just, I had friends all of a sudden I'd never really heard of any of my friends going to Japan before, but then over the last 5 years, probably I'd say I've had 6 friends that have gone and said it's really good. People have come here on honeymoons and stuff like that. And it's just something you kind of think, at least as someone from Europe, I think it's just a completely different culture. And so it's something that I think we just really wanted to experience.
Today, I wanted to ask you about culture shock in Japan. Have you had any bad experience in Japan so far?
Bad experiences, I think we've been pretty lucky being here for 2 months. We've driven quite a bit. We hired some cars, but luckily we drive on the same side of the road, so that was all fine. I wouldn't really say we've had bad experiences, but there's definitely things I think that it takes a little while to get used to, particularly as someone coming from the UK. Getting used to people being able to smoke in some places indoors is sometimes a shock when you first walk in. Sometimes I like going to Kissitons and cafes like that, the old-fashioned ones, and I always forget when I walk in, and then I first smell the cigarettes and I'm like, oh. So that's one thing to get used to. Another culture shock might be that you kind of have to be prepared that, particularly in the service industry, people are just incredibly polite. Almost, it might seem to a European to be over the top polite, and I kind of try and compensate by also trying to be as polite as possible and to not kind of seem rude, basically.
What's the huge difference between the UK and Japan?
I would say public transport works pretty well, which we're not always so used to in the UK. There's so many big engineering projects here, for example, you know, like the Shinkansen trains and things like that. We just don't have that. So really good public transport. Like I said, people are just more polite as well. I think British people sometimes have a reputation of being polite, and I guess that is true, but it's definitely more so here. And there seems to be a lot more kind of tradition here embedded in the culture. I'd say there are three main differences.
Is there anything you'd like to tell other tourists while they are in Japan?
I would say don't be afraid to try and learn a little bit of Japanese before you come, even if it's just to say, do you speak English in Japanese? Because I think the amount of people in Japan that actually speak English is more than I thought. But I do think that they are sometimes people can be quite not very confident, even if they can speak English quite well, not very confident. So if at least you show that you can at least say hello and maybe one sentence in Japanese, I think that kind of relaxes them a little bit. Other than that, I would also just say you have to throw yourself into it. You have to try all the different types of food because the food here is just incredible. In that same sort of topic as well, if you've wanted to go to an onsen, but you were kind of scared about maybe taking all your clothes off in front of people in public for the first time ever, you have to do it because it's just an amazing experience, I think. And particularly if you go outside of the cities, there are some absolutely beautiful onsen where you can sit in hot spring water and look at mountains, and it's just amazing.
I am pretty sure Japan must be a unique country compared to the others. What sort of things non-Japanese people shouldn't do something?
What should people not do? I would say, back to the topic of onsen, they're a very relaxing experience for a lot of people, and so if you're going there with a group of people, I would say don't talk too loud, and if you're going to talk, try and do it as kind of quietly as possible. That also goes for like public transport and things like that. I've seen so many videos and heard stories of that Japanese people don't really like, particularly, or one of the things they say sometimes negative about tourists is that they are maybe a bit disrespectful on public transport in terms of talking and stuff like that. The other bit of advice I'd say not to do is I don't think you need to go to Shibuya Crossing, Scramble Crossing. It's not worth it, and there's too many people there.
Thank you so much. What country are you from?
I'm from the United States.
The US.
Yeah, Miami, Florida.
How long have you been in Japan so far?
I've been in Japan for about 2 months now.
What made you come to Japan?
Honestly, growing up in the United States, Japanese culture is just very famous in America. So we grow up, you know, with Japanese movies, TV, and most importantly for me, the food. I love Japanese food.
What sort of Japanese food do you like the most?
Ooh, everything is so delicious, but the seafood is so fresh. Sashimi, I'd recommend kaizendan, which is like you go down to the fish market, you can get a bunch of fresh fish over a bowl of rice, and definitely soba noodles.
How much was your budget before you come to Japan?
I would say maybe I spend around 500 US dollars a week, but what I would say to travelers is bring more money than you think you'll need, because if you're like me, you're going to be going to Family Mart and 7-Eleven every night and buying a whole lot of snacks. So definitely bring a little bit more than you think you'll need.
I see. Was it enough?
It definitely was enough, but sometimes travel costs do add up. For instance, when you take Shinkansen or other modes of transportation, it is a little bit more expensive than other countries. So definitely make sure you are aware of the cost before you come. And then one thing that I do to try and budget my costs is maybe take other modes of transportation, such as expressway buses and local trains. Can definitely save you a bit of money.
Today, the topic is gonna be culture shock in Japan. Have you had any Japanese experience that were unfamiliar to you compared to the US?
Definitely one thing that I think was unfamiliar to me before coming to Japan was the onsen experience. So definitely in the US, nudity is kind of like a taboo concept. We don't really get naked around other people. But I would say it's definitely a cultural experience to have in Japan, and it's super relaxing and good for your skin because you get all that volcanic minerals on you, keeps you warm, and people just don't really care. So I would say you go in and you mind your own business and you have a very relaxing time and just kind of roll with it.
On the flip side, have you had any bad experience during staying in Japan?
I definitely have not personally had any bad experiences. I have heard some stories for people, like, for instance, people will say that they aren't allowed into some restaurants because they're a foreigner. Mostly what I think what the case is just Japanese staff don't have enough English speakers, so they can't really communicate that properly, so they just say no foreigners. Personally, I haven't had any bad experiences, and everybody that I've met has been really friendly.
What should non-Japanese people travelers know when going to Japan?
I would say for non-Japanese travelers, definitely go in with an open mind, get creative. I would say don't go to every single place that you see on TikTok. Walk around and find whatever has the most locals in it and whatever smells good. and you'll definitely come away with having probably the best food you've ever eaten in your life.
You said you've been in Japan for 2 months right now.
Hmm.
Do you reckon are Japanese people friendly or not?
Japanese people are definitely friendly, but it's like in any big city in the world, people are friendly like when you get to know them a little bit. Like it's not like, you're gonna be saying hello to everybody on the street. Like if you go anywhere, that's kind of not the case. But like if you like sit down and talk to anybody just like at your regular izakaya or something, I think Japanese people are very open and willing to get to know you and definitely have a little bit of a culture exchange and language exchange there.
Thank you so much.
Arigatou gozaimasu.